Hello friends, welcome to the Goldfishing companion video to my Anikthea Hand of Erebos deck tech. If you missed that video, I'll have it linked down in the description below and also annotated so that you can go watch that first to see what this deck is all about. But this video aims to take us through a few turn sequences with this deck to see what it is capable of. The goal with this deck being about a power level, I would say roughly 7 or 8-ish deck, would be to assemble a dominant board state by turn 7 or 8 or so, assuming that we will encounter some removal that's being used on our pieces. So without further ado, we will jump right into it, and while it is loading, please leave a like on the video if you like this kind of content. I always appreciate it. So we have 3 lands in our opening hand here, along with a critical piece that we can maybe discard into our graveyard if we have extra hand size. I see we have Chivalric Alliance, which we can use to discard Parallel Lives to actually start the token doubling chain going. So I think we'll go ahead and keep this hand and see what we can do. So without a turn 1 play, let's surveil 1 with Underground Mortuary, and we will surveil a Grim Guardian into the graveyard, which is absolutely fantastic. Moving on to turn 2, we're going to go ahead and probably just play an Exotic Orchard, assuming that it produces all of the mana required to have the white pip. If we didn't have the white pip, we would cast the Mana Confluence or Temple Garden. So with 2 mana, we're going to play a Chivalric Alliance, which is some early game card draw and is also a discard outlet. Go next. Let's see. So we want to save Agadeems. We also want to save Takanuma. We have a Mana Confluence to drop and a Temple Garden to drop. So I think what we want to do is potentially play an Elemental Bond, which means we would need to play the Temple Garden untapped. However, we don't quite have the Anikthea ready to create a zombie, so we wouldn't get a ton of value out of this quite yet. So I think what we actually want to do is play the Temple Garden tapped, so that way we can actually tap both of our manas here to then discard this Parallel Lives into the graveyard to create a 2/2 Night token with Vigilance. All right. So that's great. We've already got some great discard outlets here. Let's see, Godless Shrine, so another land, so we can definitely hit 5. So at this point, I think people are going to be dropping their commanders on turn 3, turn 4. So I think what we want to do, we do have a 4-drop here, so if we wanted to play an untapped land, we could. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a white spirit creature token. Okay, I think we want to run this out as quickly as we can so that we can start generating these tokens. Because we don't quite have the value for Elemental Bond. However, as I'm thinking about it, maybe we want to, yeah, actually, I think that would be on curve because we have an untapped land we would pay for, and then next turn we could then cast the Elemental Bond and then also discard the card, which would use all 5 of our mana. So I think we will shock in a Godless Shrine here, and then we will drop a Hallowed Haunting onto the battlefield. All right, and then we will go next, and I apologize, I'm skipping tapping my lands here just for convenience sake. But because they would just be untapped whenever I take the next turn anyway. So if I need to track my stuff here, I'll start tapping the mana. Okay, so this is awesome. We do have a doubling season, so we can run this out, and let's see here. I think with 5, however, we want to actually play Anikthea, I believe, for 5. Because we already have exactly what we want to reanimate in our graveyard. The question is, I think we actually chuck Doubling Season next turn, assuming that Anikthea survives to attack. So I think this is exactly what we want to be doing. So let's go Mana Confluence. Then we're going to tap for 5, and we're going to play Anikthea. So her ETB will, we will go ahead and exile the Parallel Lives, and we will create a copy of Parallel Lives that is a 3/3 zombie token. Now, with the ETB, because Parallel Lives has not entered yet, when basically we wouldn't get the extra token off of the Parallel Lives because it's not on the battlefield yet to get the replacement effect. So then we would create our so I'm just going to notate our zombies are sort of over here. It's a little bit hard with this particular mechanic and tapped out because I don't quite have a 3/3 token to select from. However, what I think I'm going to do instead is actually just use a copy to signify that this is a zombie token. So we'll do it like that. Okay, so at this point, I think our opponents probably see what we're looking to do. If Anikthea survives for another turn, we would definitely pitch the doubling season in our first main and then attack with Anikthea to reanimate it. We can also assume that Anikthea would be removed. So let's go, just because this is our first gold fishing, we're going to assume that Anikthea will survive. So we're going to go next. We're going to drop a Takanuma as land for turn. And then what we're going to do is, let's see, what do we actually... So I think we want to play an elemental bond first. So that will create 2 of our little spirit tokens here. And I'm going to try to stack my lands up neatly here so that we can start tracking stuff. So that's green, and we'll just say colorless and colorless. So that's an elemental bond, and then we'll create 2 spirits. We're going to go ahead and do that, which will be equal to the number of spirits you control. So there'll be 2 2s. Okay. Next, we will attack with Anikthea, not even caring if she survives combat, because what we can do is then reanimate, or I'm sorry, we would use our, before we go to combat, we will tap for 2, and we will discard a doubling season to create 2 tokens. So we will create 2 night tokens, which I believe is this one. All right, this is some degeneracy right here. So then we will attack with Anikthea, and we will reanimate by exiling the doubling season, and I'm going to notate it here that we're going to create a copy. So now we will have 2 token copies of doubling season. So this is just absolutely bananas. Oops, we need a copy token again. So we've got 2 token copies of doubling season. And now we are exponential and off to the races. Because then elemental bond will trigger, so we will draw 2 cards. And with only 1 mana remaining, I don't think we can really do much. So then we will go next. And now, assuming that Anikthea has been removed and back into the command zone, we could then play Agademes and cast Anikthea again for 7 by paying the extra commander tax. Or we could go into potentially a board wipe here. I think it might even be better because we don't have... If Anikthea is not on the field, our Doomlike Giant isn't as valuable. However, we would probably want to take this opportunity as well to discard another enchantment into our graveyard. Also, if our opponents have things that need to be removing, we could play Kenriths and Sundering Growth. But I think, just for our purposes, assuming that Anikthea has been removed, we would want to cast her again. So we're just going to play an untapped Agademes here. And then even if she was on the field, our plan would be the same. We just want to be making as many triggers of this as we can. So then we're going to assume that Anikthea gets her ETB, paying 7, and then we will reanimate, let's see, 1, 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 copies of Grim Guardian, which will each, I believe they each see each other, because it says whenever Grim Guardian or another enchantment ETB is under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. So I believe that represents lethal, if I'm not mistaken. Even if I am mistaken and they don't see each other, we would have at the very minimum 8 damage that we would be sending out to our opponents there. And we would have enough tokens and combat damage, I think, to probably threaten position our opponents. And then let's see, let's just run this back here for a second. What would our next 3 cards be? So ramp, we would start creating more copies of our tokens, and then we could definitely play Cacophony Unleashed to then wipe our opponent's boards so that we can keep doing our shenanigans. So that is a lethal I'm going to call by turn 7. Now let's try another goldfishing match here. All right, for this goldfish, we're going to assume that Anikthea is removed on site, that our opponents already know what we're up to, and that we just want to assume that she is removed basically once her ETB resolves. So we will start off with 3 lands here, and we'll draw our first card for turn. So our fetch lands can actually tap to search for one of these surveil lands, and I think that's actually not a bad idea on turn 1. So I think we're going to do that. We'll crack Verdant Catacombs to search for, I believe it's called Shadowy Back Street, which enters tapped, and that will surveil 1. We will then put Exploration into our graveyard, and what I'm going to do is just sort our enchantments into our graveyard and then all other stuff into our exile zone just to keep things a little bit tidy. Turn 2 is, let's see, so 3, 6, 7, yeah, okay, so turn 2. So now we can discard our boon here because we can play a Golgari Rot Farm to return a land to our hand. So I think that's what we want to do. So we're going to do Golgari Rot Farm, returning Shadowy Back Street, and then we will go to our end step and discard Boon of the Spirit Realm, which is excellent, and then we will go next. Now, if we have 3 mana, I think, yeah, so we'll actually save the Shadowy Backstreet for when we need to replace some of the enchantments we milled. Right now, we'll just drop a Savannah, and then I think what we'll do, actually the question is, hold on, do we want Vessel, which will help mill us? We can also play Calyx. Whenever Calyx or an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage, you may create a token that's coming. Okay, so we don't have copies yet. So I think we'll play the Vessel of Nascency for green, and then crack it to reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. So we want, for sure, probably just Takenuma, I think. This would go to the graveyard, and then we're going to just keep sorting our enchantments here. All right, so I think that's our turn, and then we go next turn. So let's see, we'll sort our lands. Takenuma can help mill us. We have a few options, so I think we play a, well, I don't quite have, I mean, I have some bombs in the graveyard, but not many that are sort of good setup pieces. Boon is a nice payoff. So, I think what we're going to do is actually maybe channel Takenuma, if I'm being completely honest. Because we want to mill some more stuff. However, we can also cast Calyx as a setup piece. So if we assume we only get 1 ETB off of Anikthea, we have 1 reanimation trigger, which we're going to have to start copying. So I think we actually play Calyx here. I think we actually play Calyx, and the plan will be to reanimate the boon on Anikthea ETB. So we will play our Bountiful Promenade, and then we will play our Calyx. And then we will go next, and we will play our untapped land. We will then play Anikthea, and that will reanimate our Boon of the Spirit Realm. Now, 2 enchantments ETB'd, so we would put a 1/1 counter, probably 2 1/1 counters on Calyx, and he will have Menace because of Anikthea. So this, first let me notate this properly. Here's our zombie. And then this will say, let's see, whenever Boon or another enchantment ETBs under your control, put a blessing counter on Boon of the Spirit Realm. So this would be a +1/+1, which I think we'll just notate here. And then, so our Calyx would be a 5/4 with Menace. We're going to assume that he can get in for some juicy combat damage, and we will create a copy of Boon of the Spirit Realm. Now we have two triggers on our, so we have a trigger on the first boon and then a trigger on the second boon. So let's notate this. So now our power is +3/+3. And then Calyx would then trigger, so then he would put another 1/1 counter on a creature, probably Anikthea or probably just Calyx, I think, to keep them sort of dual threateningly. Then, and I'm not going to notate the counters just for simplicity's sake, then we're going to assume that Anikthea is removed. Boom. Go next. All right. What other things? So now that we have, so we're going to have 6 mana this turn. So we want to be setting up our graveyard with more enchantments. Unnatural growth will start buffing our stuff tremendously, which is pretty crazy. However, I think what we want to do is maybe focus on removal this turn because it's on curve. So let's drop an Undergrowth Stadium. We'll play a, let's see here. Do I actually have the white mana? I don't think I have the white mana to actually cast Grasp of Fate and Aura Shards, which is big sad. Okay, well, in that case, because we would have a legendary creature, so we could channel this for 3. So in that case, what we'll do is we will go, we're going to say, let's say Aura Shards, costing 3, so that would be that. Our boon would tick up and Calyx would tick up, so now Calyx is just tremendously powerful. Then we will channel our Takenuma for 3 mana, mill 3 cards, then return a creature or planeswalker card from among them. Return a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, Song of the World Soul is going to carry us very far here. So we need a creature or planeswalker card. Do I even have any of those? None in our exile zone, which we're, creature or planeswalker. Wow, I don't even return anything to hand. But more importantly, we milled ourselves. We did it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Takenuma goes into the graveyard. So we don't have any Aura Shard triggers off of that, so I think we just go next. And then with Boseiju is an untapped land, so I think we want to stay on tempo here and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we would go Anikthea, animating the Song of the World Soul. Now we will have 2 enchantments enter the battlefield. So our both of our boons would tick up for 2 more power, and then Calyx would put 2 1/1 counters on stuff, which would probably target the Song of the World Soul. And so now we have Calyx will probably be able to get in for some damage. We would create a copy of Song of the World Soul, or let's just assume that Calyx is removed. Let's just do that. Let's just assume we couldn't even nab him off of the Takenuma, because our opponents are sequencing their plays that well. And then we'll just assume that Anikthea is destroyed immediately. Then Aura Shards will trigger for another destroy effect, and then we will go next. And then at this point, now we have just an insane amount of things we can do. So now without Anikthea even on the field, what we'll do is we'll play a Shadowy Backstreet, Surveil 1. Then we will go 1, 2, 3, 4 for a, first of all, we'll just do Replenish first. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So whenever we cast a spell, Populate, so we're going to create a token copy of Song of the World Soul, which then triggers our boon twice, which makes our creatures get an additional +2/+2. Now, Replenish will actually resolve, so we will reanimate Parallel Lives, Calyx, Chivalric Alliance, Font of Fertility, Vessel of Nascency, and Exploration. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all of our creatures will get +12/+12. Our Song of the World Soul would not would essentially be 15 15s at this point. Do we have any other so then I think what we would do is probably crack our vessel to start self-milling because we can't yet cast Anikthea. Although, what I would like to do is actually, let's leave our vessel nascency there. We're going to tap for 2 colorless to discard an unnatural growth. And then next turn, we would go next, and then we would cast our Anikthea, reanimating the unnatural growth, which would then trigger Song of the World Soul to populate another time, which would then make several copies of unnatural growth, which would be plus whatever off of Boon of the Spirit Realm, and it is just bananas from there. So that is lethal for sure by turn 9, possibly even turn 8 there, depending on what our opponents might have chosen to remove. So we'll do one more goldfishing round here. Let's actually see if we can get a hand with only 2 lands, just to see what happens. Oh, perfect. Okay. What happens if we don't have enough lands in our hand? So if we start off here, let's draw a card for the turn. We're going to play Lush Portico, surveilling 1. Kenrith's transformation can't be reanimated, so I think we actually leave that on. Well, we do need the land, so let's actually surveil it. Let's definitely surveil it. Then we will go next turn. Now, Dig Up is basically a land. So we do want this turn 2 play. I think we'll play the Savannah into perhaps. So if we go with Sithis, we can draw more cards once we play the Chivalric Alliance, but we'll be on 3. Well, we might only actually be on 2 mana next turn because Dig Up enters tapped as a tapped MDFC land. So I think the play here is to go Sithis for 2, and then we'll go next. All right, so turn 3. Let's play the Into the Triumph, and then we'll play the Chivalric Alliance, which gives us a discard outlet. We will draw a card off of Sithis, gives us Legion Loyalty here. Then we will go, I think we will say next off of that. All right, so we're going to pay. So we have 3 mana, but I really want to keep using. I want to pay the green for Dig Up to get the land into our hand. So I think we'll do that. So let's go tap the Lush Portico to cast Dig Up, and we will search for, let's say, a swamp. Let us search up a swamp. That will then go to our hand via Dig Up's ability, and we will then play that. So then I think we want to use our discard outlet here to discard probably probably actually Anointed Procession or Parallel Lives, because on the other hand, if we discard the Legion Loyalty and then reanimate it, and Anikthea were to survive, that would create 2 more ETB triggers. But ultimately, I think it's still better just to drop one of the token doublers into the graveyard. So we'll tap for 2. We'll discard our Anointed Procession to create a 2/2 Knight. And then I think we just pass off of that. Boom. Now, we still haven't drawn our 5th land, which really sucks. So what I'm thinking we might want to do... Now, we do have 2 creatures here. So what I'm thinking we do is we actually just... we pay for Parallel Lives to actually cast it instead of discarding it. Then we attack with Sithis and the Knight to get the Chivalric Alliance trigger to hopefully drop our land. So I think that's what we want to do. So first we're going to play the Parallel Lives, and we're going to draw a card off of Sithis. Gosh darn, okay. Then we're going to have to force Sithis and the Knight into combat. This is Vigilance. We're going to assume they both die, but we will draw a card with the Chivalric Alliance, and unfortunately we just cannot draw a land here. So let's just go next off of that. We're out of gas. Okay. We have to drop the Sanctum Weaver, I believe, for the mana at this point. Mirari's Wake will not quite get us there because it costs 5. For each player, exile up to 1 target enchantment. Fill out our retreat. Okay, alternatively, so I think what we actually do is go Sanctum Weaver. Then we use our Chivalric Alliance to then discard. We'll say we discard the Legion Loyalty, maybe? No, we'll discard the Mirari's Wake. So that will create 2 Knight tokens, which is doubled off of Parallel Lives. Then we go next. So turn 7 here. My goodness, we have not drawn any lands. Okay. We still can cast Anikthea using the Sanctum Weaver. So we have 1, 2, 3 enchantments. So let's go. So that will add 3 to our pool, which will pay for, let's say, the green. Then we'll tap for black and a white for Anikthea. Now we can reanimate the... I think we just have to reanimate the Mirari's Wake at this point for the mana. I know that we can reanimate the Parallel Lives here, or Anointed Possession, but we kind of need to stabilize from a mana perspective. So we will get 2 copies. Oh, wait, hold on. What am I doing here? Yeah, 3, 4, 5. We will get 2 copies of the Mirari's Wake. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana. Okay, so now all of our creatures get +2/+2. I can't see behind my backlighting here. +2/+2, and our lands tap for quadruple mana. So now let's get ridiculous with this. So 1 land will tap for, whenever you tap a land for, no, I'm sorry, it's triple. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. So it's triple. So we can tap for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can pay for a 6 mana thingy here. I think if we play the Doomwake Giant, in assuming that Anikthea survives, we effectively lock our opponents out of the game because the next Anointed Procession will come out. However, what I think I want to do is assume that Anikthea is removed, and so we're going to put her back in the command zone. And I think with that 6 mana, actually here, because we're holding Ephemerate, that would make way more sense to just blank Anikthea. So let's do that. So first of all, let's float 6. So we have 6. We're going to Ephemerate Anikthea, grabbing the next Anointed Procession, which is then doubled off of the Parallel Lives. Oh my gosh, this is going to get insane. This goes to the graveyard, which I'll actually just put here to remember it maybe. And then we would get 2 copies of Anointed Procession. So that cost us 1. So we have 5 floating, right? We have 5 floating. Then honestly, I think I would just cast a Nesting Dovehawk. And then as we move through combat, we would create another copy of Anointed Procession to then. So any reanimation trigger from Anikthea will make 2, 4, 6, 8 copies of that token. So then if we assume Anikthea goes away, even after the ephemerate, we would then, would we have enough to just cast? We wouldn't have enough to cast the Legion Loyalty, but what we could do, off of only 4 mana. Oh, but our Mirari's Wake. So we have effectively 12 mana. So then we would just replay Anikthea. We would then reanimate, or no, what we'd probably do is just discard Legion Loyalty. Then we would reanimate Anikthea. So that would cost a total of 9 mana. The ETB would grab Legion Loyalty and make 8 copies of Legion Loyalty. And it just gets bananas from there. And that's basically lethal by turn 9. So that is my Anikthea Hand of Erebos deck. It is just absolutely bonkers. After playtesting this for a couple more rounds now, I think what I need to do is replace maybe one Flicker effect, perhaps Flicker of Fate, with a self-mill effect, because I think there's just not enough self-mill in the early game. So maybe we actually replace, from a mana perspective, it's net neutral. Replace Flicker of Fate with our 2 mana Teachings of the Kirin, so that we can just mill cards and create tokens. And then this is just a little bit of incidental graveyard hate. So I think I'm actually going to make that adjustment right now. Teachings of the Kirin. All right, so that's the video. If you enjoyed this goldfishing video, feel free to leave a like on the video. I always appreciate it. And if you like this sort of content, please consider subscribing. I'll have more deck tech like this coming out in the future, along with their goldfishing companion videos. So hopefully you guys got a good sense of what the deck is capable of with this demonstration. And yeah, I am currently building this in paper, and it will be a very fun deck to bring out at game night. So that's it for the video, guys. Thank you all for watching once again, and hopefully we'll see you all in the next one.